he is in China and will not be here. He's excused.
Excuse?
I tried to get him to make a quick trip tonight, but in fact,
Mike
I
Burns.
called here and he answered. It was 11 or 12 at night
Different
when he
time
picked it up, and his voice was not quite too steady.
Mike Burns.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Gumpy.
He will be here probably 5 or 10 minutes, so we're gonna hold up the vote. We can
Okay.
go through a few things.
Okay, Paul Sackett.
Here.
Brian Krebs.
Present.
James Sackett. Oh, excuse
Jim
me,
McGann.
James McCann.
Oh,
Excuse me.
yeah.
I know you're here, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Roger Walsh.
Here.
Thanks.
Present. All right, we have received 2 petitions from the nominees who were at the election on August 29th, 2018. One from Nicole Gunring and another from Troy Zagel. They appear to be in order, and we will accept those petitions. The first thing I think that we have to deal with is, do these petitions require the Protection District Board to proceed with a recount procedure under state statutes, section 9.01. And we have checked with the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and we're advised that actually section 9.01 does not apply to us. What I'm going to do is read the letter from Nathan Judnick from the commission. And he wrote the letter to our attorney. So, dear Attorney O'Connor, this letter follows up on our conversation this morning regarding the recent annual meeting, August 29, 2018, of the Big Cedar Lake Protection and Rehabilitation Board, in the future would be board, in which members of the board were elected pursuant to Chapter 33, Subchapter 4, Wisconsin Stats. You indicated that an individual has filed a petition with the board clerk asking for a recount of the results of the vote that occurred at its annual meeting. You inquired as to whether the recount provisions of Wisconsin Stats 9.01 applied to the election that occurred. That occurred at the board's annual meeting, excuse me. The short answer is that the commission staff does not believe the recount provisions in this Stats 9.01 apply to elections held by lake management and rehabilitation districts, which occur at the annual meeting. The general provisions of chapters 5 to 12 apply to all elections, according to the statute with Stats 5.01 sub 2. However, the selection of members to these boards at annual meetings are not considered elections under with Stats 5.02 sub 4. The selection of board members at the annual meeting is not a public primary and election, which is what is governed by chapters 5 to 12. Outside of the minimal election provisions contained in chapter 33 with Stats, require secret ballots, disallow absentee ballots, lake management and rehabilitation boards are bodies that appear to have the autonomy to elect their own board members and certify the results of the annual meeting, including the recount of results, without having to comply with the requirements of traditional elections contained in chapters 5 to 12 with Stats. Consequently, the recount provisions contained in WSStats 9.01 are not applicable to annual meeting elections held by lake management and rehabilitation boards. In the instant situation, it appears that questions have arisen as to the accuracy of the results of the board member selection at the annual meeting, and a recount petition has been filed. Nothing in Wisconsin Stats 901 requires the board to accept the petition and order a recount, but also nothing would prohibit the board from accepting the petition and ordering a recount if they believe it is warranted. If the board chooses to accept the recount petition and order a recount, some provisions contained in WisStats 9.01 may be helpful and could be used as a framework in devising a recount plan that is acceptable to all parties involved. This is an informal opinion of the Elections Commission staff and is not a formal advisory opinion issued by the commission itself, pursuant to WisStats 5.056 sub 6A. Sincerely, Nathan Judnick. So after receiving this, the Board of Commissioners here decided to have a meeting and schedule a vote as to whether the board would order a recount. And that's what we're here for tonight. So there's no requirement that we do this, as I see it, and based, supported by the letters from Wisconsin Elections Commission, but that doesn't mean we won't want to order one. And so I am going to start with a motion. I'll entertain a motion from one of the commissioners to approve the order for recount of election of commissioners at the 2018 annual meeting. I'll also read the order for those who don't have copies. Whereas the district conducted an election by paper ballot to fill 2 seats on the Board of Commissioners at the annual meeting of the district's electors and property owners on August 29th, 2018, and whereas 4 candidates were nominated for the 2 open seats on the board. 4 persons were appointed who reviewed the ballots and announced that the nominees listed below received the number of votes set forth opposite their respective names below. Roger Walsh, 197, David Clausen, 166, Nicole Donring, 163, and Troy Zagel, 161. Whereas on August 31st, 2018, Troy Zagel personally delivered a recount petition to the district operations manager, Dan Carroll. And whereas on September 4th, 2018, Nicole Donring personally delivered a recount petition to the district operation manager, Dan Carroll. Whereas legal counsel for the Wisconsin Elections Commission has advised the district, 1, that the recount provisions contained in WisStats 9.01 are not applicable to annual meeting elections held by lake management and rehabilitation boards, but 2, that the district board could accept a recount petition and order a recount if the board believed that is warranted, and 3, that some provisions contained in WisStats 9.01 may be helpful and could be used as a framework in devising a recount plan. And whereas the district's legal counsel has advised that he concurs in the legal opinions of the Wisconsin Election Board on these matters. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the Big Cedar Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District desires to provide for a recount of votes cast in the election of commissioners conducted at its 2018 annual meeting to ensure that the persons receiving the greatest and second greatest number of votes are seated as commissioners. Now therefore, the Board of Commissioners does hereby order that a recount of votes cast in the election of commissioners at the district's 2018 annual meeting be conducted and shall, by a separate order, appoint a board of canvassers and establish procedures for that board to conduct a recount of the votes cast at the 2018 annual meeting. And be it further ordered that the results of the recount shall be treated as the district's final and unappealable determination of the nominees receiving the greatest and second greatest number of votes in that election, and that such person shall be seated as commissioners upon the execution of oaths of office for terms expiring at the conclusion of the district's 2021 annual meeting. This order was passed and adopted at a duly convened meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Big Cedar Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District this 10th day of September 2018, and there's a space for a roll call vote. So entertain a motion to approve this order.
I'll make a motion to approve of the order.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion.
What happened with the ballots that were cast? What's the chain of custody with those right now?
Dan?
Those ballots have remained in my custody since that night. After the count was done, they were all put in a bucket. And, after they were read, my officer, I gave him the bucket and he held on to that until we were done cleaning up at the meeting, which I took the bucket back. And since then, they've been sealed in a bag and locked in our evidence locker.
In this building?
Yes.
Okay.
The next day, when I came in, they were put into the evidence locker.
Any other discussion?
Are comments open to the public?
No.
Or just the,
No, this is a commissioner meeting. I'm trying to stall for Chris Kennedy to come. He is teaching a class somewhere. And I think said he could be here by 6. So I'm gonna wait a little bit. If there's no further discussion, we'll just wait to have the vote.
We could talk about the Packers game.
Well, just the second half,
Just the last 24 minutes.
just the second. Calling a lifeline.
Tony's on speaker with a lot of people.
You got it on speaker, I think, right?
Yeah, tell him.
Can't help you.
Chris, Roger, where are you? You're what, you're where?
Yeah, club.
Okay, you'll be here in a couple of minutes, we're waiting for you.
Don't
Hook
speak.
it up,
Don't speak.
thank you. He's at the,
He's
by the audio.
Come around the line.
So,
So then are we, after this motion, you'd still have to have another motion for the canvassers, or is that? all?
Well, it was just a recount.
This just, we don't need a order for 2 commissioners.
If it doesn't pass, yeah.
If the vote is on the first order, is no.
Right.
Anybody heard any report from the Packer training folks?
they're waiting for the MRI.
We're waiting for the MRI?
Maybe Chris can pick that up too. There was a lot of people ready to commit harmful acts to themselves at halftime, including myself.
I watched the first half, but not the second.
It was a crazy place. It was cool.
A lot of people